Hello, my name is Raul Cuevas, and the issue that I chose is organized retail theft. This isn't just someone stealing from a store. It involves a coordinated group stealing large amount of merchandise and later on reselling it. From my understanding and from experience with dealing with these crimes often cross state lines, which makes them much harder for local law enforcement like myself to handle. What this means is that the problem goes beyond one state's control, which is why federal involvement becomes important. On page 294 of the textbook, it explains how federal government handles issues that go beyond state control. We I helped assisted on an incident where people were breaking into the train cargo containers, and it just so happened that there was a bunch of rifles in them. Approximately a number of I forgot the quantity of rifles that were taken, but obviously because we believe that these things were going to get distributed throughout the state of California and to other states and possibly be sold, moved to Mexico, the FBI actually got involved as well. So that's it. Kind of reminded me of this, and this is obviously an ongoing issue. So a solution to this issue would be to form a federal law, which Congress could create laws that increase the penalties for organized thefts, especially when it crosses state lines. They could also require online markets to track and verify sellers to reduce the resale of often stolen goods. Basically, the goal would be to it to make it harder for these organized groups to operate and profit, and that there will be stricter punishment if they are caught doing this. On page 295, the textbook explains that Congress has key powers, including lawmaking, budgeting, and oversight, which they could, given these circumstances, they could speak about this issue and make it into a law or put the law in place so that they could vote on it. So the United States uses bicameral system, meaning both the House of Representatives and the Senate must approve a bill before it becomes law. The House tends to move faster because the members represent smaller districts and respond quickly to public concerns, like, for instance, this retail theft. And also, the Senate is more cautious when and focuses on long-term impacts, which can slow the process down. In pretty much in simple terms, this system ensures that laws are carefully reviewed before being passed. And on page 292 of the textbook, it describes how this bicameral system works. So before a bill becomes law, it must go through congressional committees. For this issue, the bill would likely go through a Judiciary or Commerce committee, and these committees can approve the bill, make changes, or stop it entirely, depending on how the bill is written and what they like, dislike, that kind of stuff. What this means is that many bills never even make it past this stage. Congressional leadership also plays a major role by deciding which bills are prioritized and brought forward. So again, it also depends on them. Like if they are against this or for it, they'll make it a priority and bring it up so that they could vote on it. On page 297, the textbook explains the role of committees and leadership in the lawmaking process. So, like I mentioned before, it just kind of depends if they want to bring this bill up and vote on it, if they want it to pass or agree with it. But you got to also take into account that there are several influences on Congress when making decisions. Like, for instance, retail companies will likely push for stronger laws to protect their businesses, while others may be concerned about over regulations. Also, you got to take into account like public opinion would be important. If people see it an increase in retail theft, they might pressure lawmakers to take action. Political parties and lobbyists can also influence how strict or lenient a law becomes. This kind of reminds me of in San Francisco a couple years ago when this became a huge issue, and you would literally see groups of people breaking into high fashion stores and ransack it and just steal like a bunch of purses that are worth like thousands of dollars and take off. And the law enforcement was overwhelmed and they couldn't keep up with everything that was going on. Eventually, those stores ended up closing up their locations because they kept on losing so much inventory and they were just losing money. So eventually those stores closed down and moved to other locations or just never came back due to that. And on page 304, the textbook discusses how these different factors influence congressional decision making. So just this is next slide just kind of talks about the separation of powers, how Congress creates laws, presidents approve or veto the laws, and there's a system of checks and balances to make sure that not one group is more powerful than the other. So, like I mentioned, power in the federal government is divided between branches. Congress is responsible for creating the laws, while the president has the power to either sign the bill into law or veto it. And if the president vetoes the bill, Congress can override that veto, but it requires a strong majority. So this goes back to like who's in charge at that moment, if it's Republicans or Democrats, and which president he's lined up with. Because if it's an opposite group, they might not have a majority to try to override it. And then also basically the system ensures that no single branch has too much power, like I mentioned. On page 297, the textbook explains this further, how this system has its checks and balances and how they work. So say for instance they do pass the law. Once they pass the law, that it's not done yet. There's still another process. So once the law is passed, then the president is responsible for enforcing it. So which would lead to either since it's going to be a federal law, then that means a federal agency like the FBI or Department of Justice would likely handle organized retail crime cases. And then also Congress may delegate authority to these agencies, allowing them to create specific rules and enforcement strategies. What this means is that Congress creates the law, but agencies handle how it is applied in real situations. And on page 305, the textbook explains how presidential powers and how things get delegated. So, in conclusion, like I mentioned, this is something I personally have dealt with in my line of work, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And organized retail theft is continuously growing, and it may require federal intervention. If that will happen, I'm not too sure. I think just like anything, once it becomes too big of a problem, I think the government eventually notices and takes charge or wants to try to do something about it. So the process is usually slow. So like I mentioned, the process of creating a law is complex and involves multiple steps. So which would include Congress, committees, and the president. And understanding how these systems works helps explain why solving national problems takes time, like I mentioned, but it also ensures that decisions are carefully made to make sure that if the law does pass, that it's that they write it correctly and that they don't try to overstep too much, and that hopefully they are able to solve the issue